Let's be honest, nobody ever likes the guy in charge. Hey folks, I have the pleasure of being able to welcome back to the show Stubagful, and in fact, you'll even get to see his actual face this time. And we're going to be talking about both in the current and the macro sense of Doctor Who history as a whole, the fact that fans always seem to have it out for whoever's currently running the show. It was just kind of a fairly laid-back conversation. There's going to be a bit less structured than I usually do, but I had a good time with this conversation, and I think you might too. Let's go to it. So, this was your idea to talk about.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun to try and go into the psychology of why Doctor Who fans tend to hate the showrunner, no matter who it is, because this is a persistent problem. It's Chris Chibnall is having it right now. Steven Moffat developed it over time because obviously, he started out as the golden child.
Yeah.
Russell T Davies did start to develop it towards the end of his tenure, and this goes back to the classic series as well, because JNT was sort of this massive figurehead of derision for quite a while because the show started falling apart under his watch. So I thought it'd be quite interesting because it's quite obvious that there are lots and lots of factors as to why the show might be stalling, in our opinion, but we always seem to pin it on the showrunner.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really weird.
Well, and it's worth pointing out that us having this conversation and noting it as a phenomenon, because I do agree with you, it does seem to kind of be the case, that it does not mean that there are not legitimate reasons to criticize whoever the showrunner was at the time.
Oh, of course.
But it does always seem like the fan estimation of them goes up once they are no longer in the job.
Oh yeah, because because Russell T Davies did get quite a lot of criticism back in the day, and then around the time that Steven is getting quite a lot of shit, I noticed people starting to talk about him as if he was as if these were like the golden days, which they kind of were to some degree, but at the same time it was much more noticeable when Steven started to get a lot more criticism online.
You know what my favorite type of thing that when this happens is when the new guy gets criticized for stuff that the old guy also got criticized for, but they act like the old guy didn't do that. So, like,
yeah,
when people would, because this is a danger for me to go down this rabbit hole, but obviously some people like to hit the agenda drum, and they really liked hitting Moffat with that towards the end when characters like Bill got introduced. And so often when I would see that, they would talk as if that didn't happen in Davies' era. And whether or not you think there is agenda pushing, I remember Davies' era and how much he was accused
he did,
pushing that exact same thing because of characters like Jack Harkness. But when they started accusing Moffat of that, they acted as if that had never happened under Davies.
Yeah, it's not a new thing. It is like people try and pull this to sorry, do you mind me swearing on your thing?
I'll bleep it.
Okay, yeah. It is like people, they seem to think it's a new thing. They're just sort of using old reasons that we had to hate the showrunner and thinking that they're new for some reason.
I think part of it's that. I wonder if just part of it is, well, here's me being really cynical. Fans are just never happy. And
yeah, that is true.
But they like to imagine that they were once. And so once you can segment something off into specific eras, you can suddenly put on the nostalgia goggles for the older segments, even though at the time you still weren't happy. But nobody likes to think that they've always been miserable.
But that's the thing. The way that you're saying it is, I've been on YouTube for a while criticizing Steven Moffat, and going so over the top with it. And now we got to the Chris Chibnall era, and I made that video that I made recently talking about how I'm kind of bored with the Chris Chibnall era, and I kind of miss the Moffat era, even though I got so over the top with it.
You dragged Moffat. And this is the thing, like, we are not immune from this criticism because you dragged Moffat a lot.
I did, but I never did it out of spite. I always did it as in, Steven Moffat's brain is so massive that it's like the size of a planet or something. That's me just taking the piss. I never really saw him as like, oh, he's like this big evil guy. But that's the thing. People will also make up reasons to hate the showrunner, because I remember there was this one story. I can't remember where I saw it. It was people were saying that apparently Moffat was blocking Torchwood coming back, which was just Steven Moffat has never had anything to do with Torchwood. It was before his time, and it's not like he's head of BBC program planning or anything. It's just he's this big figurehead in the show that we don't like at the moment. So say something we don't like say Torchwood not coming back, that's his fault somehow.
He's not an executive. He's a high-end guy in the creative department, but all that means all that means is he gets a long leash when he gets put on any given project. But that doesn't mean he controls what goes on elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of amazed when I saw that story first come out there. I was just like, why are people... There's got to be something about the psychology of the Doctor Who fan that makes them think things like this.
I'm not sure it's, strictly speaking, restricted to Doctor Who, though, because, I don't know this fandom as well, I will grant, but I can look at something like Star Trek, and while you don't have the showrunner thing, it does seem like every new series of Star Trek, while it's airing, is not as good as the one that came before.
And then in hindsight, you'll start to reevaluate it when the next one comes out and gets a similar reaction.
Yeah, and then ultimately everyone just decides DS9 was the best anyways, but as time goes along, it gets muddy.
Yeah, I think it's just that level of love and passion that comes with being a fan of such a massive geeky properties like Star Trek and Doctor Who. I think it's sort of like you're defending a loved one or a spouse from. It's sort of like you're defending a loved one or a spouse from abuse.
You know what?
It's this level of love that you have for this. You have for this show that you think when someone's not treating it right, that then you start acting out. Well, and that can go over the line in cases like I just mentioned with Moffat and Torchwood.
Well, see, the thing is, I think there's a certain amount of incentive to find someone to blame if you're not happy with something that you like. And
yeah, that's true.
And because this is ancillary, and it's an analogy, but I think it kind of fits. I don't know if you game much. I don't.
Vaguely.
Yeah, I don't.
Sometimes. I've started getting back into it.
I don't really, but I used to, and because I care about it as a medium, and I think there's a lot of cool things that can be done with it, I still keep on top of what's going on. But you look at something like what's going on with the company Bethesda right now, which is the company that makes the Elder Scrolls games and Fallout.
Fallout, yeah.
Yeah. Right now, their output is so bad and has been consistently in the last few years that people are kind of forced to reassess whether or not their early stuff was even any good. And that's a real painful thing to have to do.
Yeah.
If you're looking at something, boy, I used to love this and I don't now. It's much easier to be able to say, I don't like it now because of this person who's in charge now, as opposed to reverse engineering that and realizing, oh, the things I don't like now have kind of always been there.
Yeah, I was watching, that reminds me of H Bomber Guy's Control-Alt-Delete video where he's talking about this need that we have to find someone to blame. And he was talking about gamers looking at a specific figurehead in a company to say that your attitude is the problem, you're the problem, and not thinking about like the bigger picture and that there are systemic issues causing people to make these mistakes.
I mean, and sometimes it's systemic, or sometimes in terms of a creative property, maybe there are just elements of it that you as a person no longer enjoy. That doesn't mean they've changed. So like, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to badmouth anybody, but actually just today there was a YouTube channel that I unsubscribed from, and the person who ran it, they were doing stuff. I've been following them since they were doing stuff on Newgrounds back in like 2002.
Wow, that's...
And I've always...
I feel old.
I've always loved their stuff, but what I realized when I unsubscribed today, like, I felt bad because I was like, has it changed? Has it gotten worse? But I had to sit down and sort of take assessment and realize, no, it hasn't changed, but I have.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, I was primed for this and I got something out of it. He hasn't changed what he's done, but I've grown out of it. It doesn't mean, that doesn't negate the enjoyment I had at the time, but it doesn't mean I kind of can't take enjoyment from it anymore. And if I didn't sort of do that sort of check myself, I could have just gone, he's no good anymore. It's like, no, he's doing the same stuff at the same quality. It's just, it's not working for me now.
Yeah, I have been wondering that myself with this whole throwing my toys out of the pram over Chris Chibnall. I have been wondering that myself over whether it is me that's changed. But then again, I stuck with Doctor Who all throughout Steven Moffat. As much as I was complaining on the internet about him, I stuck with it. I didn't like the direction the show was going in that much, but there was just sort of something about it where I just felt like I have to stick around and say things about it.
Well, it is different with Doctor Who versus other things because of things like the regenerations and getting whole new actors and whole new supporting cast and basically effectively rebooting the show in universe every couple of years. That does mean that the show, by necessity, to some degree, does clearly change over time. So it's not quite the same thing as what I was saying with that YouTuber where it was like, well, he's doing the exact same thing as before. But I do wonder...
Yeah, I mean, that's the same person, yeah.
Yeah, but I do wonder if to some extent there is at least a little of that, if for some people they might have grown out of some of the fundamental aspects of Doctor Who, but they don't want to admit that. And so it becomes easier to say, no, the problem is the show's now bad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you do appreciate different stuff as you grow older. Like, I've been watching the show since, New Who since it started, of course, when I was like 14. And yeah, because I don't think I would have appreciated something as mature as Heaven Sent, for example, when I was 14. I mean, I would have probably appreciated it on the level of it being Doctor Who, but just not on the level that I appreciate it now, where I'm seeing more deeper meanings in it. So I suppose Heaven Sent was like that thing where I felt the show had grown up with me to a certain degree, and then season 11 is so far removed from it. I feel like I've been watching the show in. I feel like the issue with the way that I've transitioned from season 10 to season 11 is I've been watching it as this continuous show from start to finish. So I sort of feel like I'm more entitled to make judgments about the way that the show's being run. I don't know if that's me being a bit big-headed, but I don't know whether it is me that's me having grown out of the show, because it does do lots of different things all the time.
I mean, but you know, thinking about the video that you put up recently, some things have changed in terms of the approach and the feel of it. The core is still the same. The concept is still the same.
Yeah.
Most of the visual iconography is the same. But there is still a different feel to it that comes about with each new showrunner.
Yeah, with each new showrunner. I mean, it's the most noticeable aspect.
Yeah.
The new showrunner.
I wonder if part of it is just that, and I'm trying to think of a way to say this that doesn't sound overly judgmental, but I wonder if part of it is that in terms of what was attempting to be done and the tone and the themes and the mood, I feel like, kind of like what you said, the show kind of matured going from Davies to Moffat, because Davies was a little bit more camp, a little bit sillier. Moffat, it felt like it felt like growing up a little bit, because it was dealing with heavier didn't always work, but it was trying for heavier themes and more adult stuff.
Yeah, like Don't Cremate Me at the end of season 8. That was very dark.
Exactly. But then with Chibnall, the overall vibe is, if I was going to say it's closer to Davies in terms of feel and tone and weight to it. And again, you can decide whether or not that's to your preference, but I do wonder if part of it is that it feels like a backslide. Like, imagine if you read the 7th Harry Potter book and it was tonally closer to the 2nd than the 6th. It's like, well, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, true. It's night and day, those two. Yeah.
Yeah, we were heading in this trajectory, but now it feels like we've gone back. And I do think Doctor Who is a show that should be allowed to do that, but I do wonder, if you've been watching it continuously, if it feels like a backward step and an undoing of evolution, since there was kind of an overall trajectory between the first two showrunners.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a weird setup and weird format. Like you were saying, like the show is essentially rebooted every few years or so. Maybe that sort of gives rise to this idea that we should hate the new showrunner because, you know, people have a hard time dealing with change, and I mean that's just true. And I suppose it happened over time for Davies and Moffat because, you know, familiarity breeds contempt, I suppose, because because Moffat, he was our golden child for a couple of years. Then people started hating him, and it got far too over the top, to the point where I'm hearing rumours about stuff that he's supposedly done, which he's obviously got nothing to do with. But Chibnall hasn't had the honeymoon period.
Well, I think the thing is, I think that's I feel like Chibnall, if we were to try and track this as a trend, Chibnall might actually be more the standard, and the fact that the other two had a grace period might be more the exception. It's just, even though numerically that's not the case yet. What I mean by that is, Davies had big benefit of the doubt coming in because he brought the show back. We wouldn't have had it at all if it weren't for him. And given that there had been no new, I would say, proper episodes since '89 and nothing visual since '96, people were just happy to have it back at anything close to the old show at all. And so he gets a grace period for that. And then Moffat, because he had written such strong stuff during the Davies era, he got a grace period based on that. Whereas Chibnall, because none of the things he's written for the show, but none of the things he's written are as beloved as things like The Empty Child or Blink. And so he doesn't get the grace period. And I wonder if we'll see, as things go on and we get whoever the next showrunner is, and fingers crossed whoever the next showrunner is after that, because I don't want the show to end. But if we'll find out that the grace period is the exception rather than the norm.
Yeah, because I don't think I mean, obviously I wasn't around in the day, so I couldn't say about JNT. But yeah, there were reasons for Russell and Steven to have those grace periods. I mean, I suppose because when Russell brought the show back, there was no guarantee that it was going to be a hit. I mean, lots of people were quite, I'm not really sure if this is going to work about it.
Yeah,
because people. As the TV landscape changed around Doctor Who, it was because it was so massive that it stayed on the air, and it kind of felt a bit anachronistic in the landscape of British TV in the 80s. I think it is just familiarity breeds contempt because we're so close to this property, because it just inspires such strong feelings in people, and therefore we don't want to see it mistreated.
Yeah, I guess and this is not a question that I had thought I was going to ask, but you know what? Let's try and end on a little bit more of a note. If you were to pick the next showrunner, because regardless of whether Chibnall does one more series or two, or has been secretly fired and we haven't been told, that's not the case. But some people claim that. Regardless, at some point there will be a new showrunner. Do you have a pick?
I would not wish that on anybody.
Okay,
this fandom and how Chibnall has been accepted. I would not wish that on anybody.
Okay, let's set the jackasses like you and me aside for a minute.
Yes,
and
let's do that.
Just talking what they could bring to the show.
I'm going to be greedy and go for Charlie Brooker.
Oh, that is greedy.
That is very greedy, because, me, growing up with the show, wants it to do darker, more mature things like Heaven Sent. Yeah, Charlie Brooker.
So, okay, I'm gonna give you that. You're inspiring me to give you a greedy pick, which I know is impossible. So then I'll give a realistic one. So my greedy pick would be Neil Gaiman.
Oh yeah, that is very greedy.
But he has said after Good Omens that he's not going to show run anything ever again. So I know that's not even an option. So realistically, I'm still surprised that the gig did not go to Toby Woodhouse.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. I really enjoyed Being Human quite a lot.
I actually didn't love it all that much, but definitely tonally it is closer to Doctor Who. I feel like the episodes of Doctor Who he actually wrote are better than Chibnall's. And I mean, Chibnall ran a show too. He ran Broadchurch, but Broadchurch is a very different beast. Whereas I feel like you could look at something like Being Human and go, okay.
He's quite solid, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew they were going to... I kind of knew they were going to go for Chibnall, though, because he's the one who's had massive success outside of the show.
That's true.
And ratings were dwindling under Moffat, so the BBC would want to play it safe.
I mean, and I suppose that's fair, but I hate that they did that, because I do, and that was something you mentioned in your video. I do feel like that is ultimately sort of the issue that I have with Chibnall specifically, not with everything that went on with Series 11, and there are some individual episodes that I do love. I think It Takes You Away is phenomenal, but part of the reason I love that episode so much is because it's not safe. But Chibnall and a lot of the series overall, and especially the episodes he wrote, are very safe.
So safe, yes.
Yeah.
And if the rumours that it's going to be all like classic monsters this time round, he's probably played it safe again, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's played it safe in a different way. And again, it's like, it's actually, again, it really it irritates me, because a lot of, on paper, the broad strokes of Series 11 were things I wanted. I wanted fewer two-parters. I didn't want an overarching story. I didn't want returning villains, and they did all that stuff. And yet, entitled fan that I am, I still wasn't happy.
Yeah, we're just never going to be happy, are we?
I know. It really is. It's like they took my checklist of things I wanted to do, did all of it, and still presented me with something I wasn't happy with. I am the epitome of the unpleasable fanboy
Maybe in 5 years' time we can come back and watch it again, and you think, you know what? Maybe it's not that bad.
You know what? Fingers crossed.
Yeah, because because I have been enjoying your revisitation videos of new episodes, and I did for Last of the Time Lords, and ended up enjoying that quite a lot in hindsight.
I still have issues with that, but I have found that going back, even episodes that I didn't like at the time and still don't like, I can usually find at least one thing that I'm like, okay, there is that.
Yeah.
And I suspect if and when I get around to revisiting Series 11, I'll probably find that there too.
Yeah, as I said, familiarity breeds contempt.
You get
a bit of distance, and you can reevaluate it with fresh eyes. So I think that is why people hate the showrunner. Maybe Chris Chibnall will find his fan base in 5-10 years time. Maybe.
Hey, stranger things have happened.
Yeah. Shall we wrap up then?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Do you have anything to plug besides your channel?
My Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's where the big bucks are.
Myself, I exist.
Do you though? Do you really?
Does anyone really exist? I'm not sure. I will have to check that.
Okay. Yeah, I would double check your figures on that.
Yes. Yeah. Are we really going to get into existentialism? That should be what we do after Doctor Who and all these franchises. Existential questions. Who are we? What are we? Why?
Why anything? What have I been doing with my life? Oh God.
Yeah, the internet.
All right. Well, thanks so much for this. I'm really glad that we. Thank
you for allowing me to take part in your channel.
Yeah, people have been. I don't know if they've been pestering you. They've been pestering me to have you on again for a while.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'm very happy to oblige. So, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you don't already subscribe to Stubagful, you should do so by clicking the link down in the description. Also, while you're down there, you can like, subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts on anything that we talked about, buy merch, find the link to my Patreon. That's super helpful. Also, you don't have to do any of it. I'd appreciate it, certainly, but at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings, sometimes with a guest. And until next time, this council is adjourned.